Recording in progress.
Good. It's 7 p.m. and I want to issue a good evening to all of you who are with us this evening for the February 3rd, 2022 meeting of the Franklin Conservation Commission. Before we begin our meeting this evening, I do have a statement to make, and that is due to concerns regarding COVID-19, we are conducting a remote, virtual, and in-person Conservation Commission meeting. In an effort to ensure citizen engagement and comply with the open meetings laws of the state of Massachusetts, citizens are able to dial into the meeting using a cell phone or landline simply by calling the number 929-205-6099 and putting in the meeting number 894-6799-4519. Those who are using a laptop, tablet, or iPad may also use the Zoom application and join in by putting in the meeting number 894-6799-4519. I would like to let all the citizens know and the public that they will have ample time for questions. What I would ask is that first we let the presenter, the applicant or the representative, and the commissioners ask their questions. And once we are done with those, the chair, which is I, will then call for questions from the public, and we will give you the appropriate amount of time. So before we begin, I do need to make a roll call of the commissioners that are with us tonight. First of all, the Commissioner and Vice Chair, Jeff Milne.
Jeff Owens, President, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Jeff Livingstone.
Jeff Livingstone, President.
Thank you. Commissioner Patrick Gallagher.
Pat Gallagher, present.
Thank you. Commissioner Andrew Mazzucchelli.
Thank you. It's Andrew Mazzucchelli.
Thank you. Commissioner Richard Johnson. Again, Commissioner Richard Johnson. Richard Johnson appears not to be with us this evening. So also with us from the Conservation Office and Town, first is Brian Tabernier, who is the Director of Planning and Community Development. Good evening, Brian.
Good evening.
We also have Tyler Pazlaski from the Conservation Office. Tyler?
Good evening.
And finally with us, we have Ms. Lenore White, who is with WSI and doing consulting for us as a result of not having a conservation agent at this point. Good evening, Lenore.
Good evening.
So with that said, I will formally now open the meeting, and we will go to the public hearings. The first public hearing is an NOI for the Grove Street Shared Path. Is the applicant or the representative with us?
Mr. Chairman.
Jonathan
Yeah,
Nero,
hold-
environmental scientist. Oh,
Oh, 1 second, please. I'm sorry. Yes, Vice Chair Milne.
Jeff Nolan, I'm going to recluse myself from this hearing.
You are recusing. Let the record show that Vice Chair and Commissioner Jeff Milne has recused himself due to a conflict. For anybody making a presentation that's live, would you please sign in at the pad over there?
Could I ask the chair if I could give a quick presentation, not presentation, but a front end on this before they get going on this? I just have
Certainly.
a couple of things
Yes.
I'd like to mention about the project.
Oh, okay. For those that don't know, this is Brian Tabernier. Yes, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that this is a town project. Normally, town projects, we don't ask Beta to do a review. We have the agent do the review.
Right.
We actually don't have an agent right now. So I'm doing the review the best I can. I will ask Lenore for assistance, but it's a little awkward because Lenore is a subcontractor with Beta. So just so you know that, I want to lay it out there in front. You know, we've had engineers review their own work in the past. It's a little funky, if you will, but they do actually double-check their own work, essentially. But we will, the project actually, from what I can see, actually should not get us hung up on anything really big, and I don't think it's going to be any problem. But having said that, it's your decision on what you'd like to do with this.
Understand, and we, the chair and the commission has a high degree of confidence in Lenore White, and we know that she will represent the project fairly.
Yes, you will. I'm sure she will.
You are?
Hi, Brooke Cottle, the Assistant Town Engineer.
Yes.
So for this project, this was submitted by Beta Group on behalf of us, Town of Franklin, Mike Maglio, the Town Engineer. So this is for the NY for the Phase 1. There's going to be 2 phases to this project. We're trying to improve the use of Washington Street for motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists as the overall project. But this NOI is just for the Phase 1. And that'll be intersection improvements at Grove Street and Washington Street intersection, extending from Washington Street to Tobacco Road on Grove Street. And Jonathan Nero is here from Beta Group to talk more about that.
Thank you, Brooke. Again, my name is Jonathan Nero, environmental scientist with Beta Group.
Yes, John.
If I may, could I share my screen with you folks?
Please do.
Thank you. All right, can everyone see this?
We can.
Excellent. So as Brooke mentioned, this work is going to be taking place from the Washington Street, Grove Street intersection up to the Grove Street, Tobacco Road intersection. And again, as Brooke mentioned, it is a 2-phase project extending pretty far up Grove Street, but we are just dealing with phase 1 today, which is the section highlighted down here. So this sort of shows the environmental context to this area. The proposed work will generally be within this clouded red area. And as you can see, and as many probably know, this is the street that is home to the site of a few of Town of Franklin's public drinking water supply wells. So we are entirely within a Zone 2 wellhead protection area. And we are also constrained by a isolated vegetated wetland on the west side of Grove Street here and a bordering vegetated wetland on the east side of Grove Street here. Just for some point of information, MassGIS does show a stream connecting the two. I did perform the wetland delineation on this project. They are entirely isolated from each other. MassGIS also depicts a potential vernal pool on either side of the street. By the time I got out and did the delineation, we were past the breeding season, but the areas do exhibit signs of potential vernal pool indicators such as ponding of water, shallow depressions, and attachment sites and sites for cover. So the project is confined, as Brian said, it's not a very impactful project in terms of resource area, but it does fall within the 100-foot buffer zone. However, it stays outside of the 50-foot buffer zone to both isolated and bordering vegetated wetlands. So if I zoom in on the southern portion of the project here, just to give some context, although not all of the work is within jurisdiction, at the intersection here, the town is proposing a few wheelchair ramps to improve accessibility along the sidewalks, replacement of sidewalks with new hot mix asphalt sidewalks, granite curbing, and signage and crosswalk striping improvements. As you move up north and actually get onto Grove Street, north is going right, as you can see here. Mm-hmm. There's going to be proposed mill and overlay of the roadway. And in conjunction with that, the town is actually proposing to, while maintaining all work within the existing right-of-way and not doing any sort of private property takings, widening the road here at the southern portion of Grove Street to make room for a 10-foot wide asphalt shared use path on the west side here. And the project currently takes us up from that intersection of Grove and Washington Street up to the intersection with Rosewood Lane and Tobacco Road. So in terms of impacts, again, this project won't involve any resource area impacts. As you can see, the isolated wetland is up here in green. We have a bordering vegetated wetland on the east side of Grove Street, also in green. Red is your 50-foot buffer zone, and the purple is the 100-foot buffer zone resource area. So there will be, going to table here just to illustrate this. There will be approximately 3,000 square foot increase in impervious area within buffer zone. So that's the primary impact that we're looking at here. However, as a form of mitigation, what the town plans to do, going back to the plan here, is along Grove Street, they plan to essentially take all these areas of new impervious surfaces, pitch them towards the roadway for sheet flow into the roadway. This runoff is then going to be captured by two new proposed deep sump catch basins, which are tied into this drain manhole here. From there, it is going to be discharged subsurface out of the 100-foot buffer zone into this hydrodynamic separator for total suspended solids removal. And from there, it will be discharged to this infiltration basin where it can infiltrate into some really great sandy, well-draining soils that we have in this portion of the town. So the stormwater system is fairly robust. It's actually calculated to remove about 95% of total suspended solids, and it does provide the 44% pre-treatment prior to discharge to the infiltration basin that's required for a critical area, i.e. The Zone 2 wellhead area.
Okay.
And aside from that, that is sort of the overall nuts and bolts of the project. I would be happy to take any questions the commission may have or any point of clarification that you request.
Jonathan, thank you. Before we get to the commissioners, I would like to call on Lenore White to comment, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lenore White, Wetland Strategies. I worked with Brian and Tyler yesterday. We took a look at the plans. I had some initial questions about it, which we answered. I didn't have some information that I needed that is now available to me. I did a little bit more work today on it, and as Jonathan has pointed out, both the isolated wetland and the bordering vegetated wetland are identified as potential vernal pools. And from what Jonathan has just said, they indeed may be suitable for certification during the breeding season because of some observations that he made out there. And so my concern is that in the stormwater report, it talks about how the existing flow is sheet flow off the roadway, and presumably some of that flow enters these areas, these wetland areas. Now, with the proposed design, you're going to take all of that sheet flow and send it down into an area which is beyond the buffer zone for these potential vernal pools. So my concern is that we're affecting potentially these vernal pools by removing any surface runoff water that may contribute to them. And so that's a concern. And I didn't see anything in Beta's report about that. So I wonder if Jonathan, you might be able to address that.
Sure, I can answer that, Lenore. So I would point out, I guess first, this wetland to the east side of the road, which is one of the ones identified as a potential vernal pool, is associated with an intermittent stream network. And so I anticipate that at least a portion of the hydrology is provided by that intermittent stream. On both sides of the road, you do have some sheet flow runoff from the vegetative roadway shoulders, as in the area where the path is proposed and directly adjacent. But I do believe there is currently curbing in the road, so any runoff within the roadway itself or the traveled way wouldn't be sheet flowing down here anyways. So once the path is constructed, that path will drain towards a municipal drainage system. However, this entire slope, which is pretty significant, it's about a 35% grade, will continue to flow down to this isolated wetland area. And while I do agree that it's a good point about surface water runoff providing some hydrology to these areas, I would note that we noted, even outside the wetland boundary, extremely shallow groundwater, very close to the surface. And so I do think there are significant groundwater inputs that provide the hydrology for these vernal pools. So I do think the fact that these slopes will continue to contribute hydrology to this isolated wetland. You have intermittent streams contributing hydrology to the bordering vegetated wetland, and then you have our runoff being infiltrated back into the presumably same groundwater table. I do believe that we'd be maintaining the current hydrology in these areas.
Okay, because the stormwater report does talk about how the pre and post runoff conditions are quite different. There's a tremendous reduction in flow. You can't increase the flow, but in this case, there's a tremendous reduction in flow. So I'm concerned about that reduction in flow, but provided we maintain as much, natural area as we can around those potential vernal pools, and maybe increase it if, as some mitigation if possible, if we want to do some revegetation or something, I don't know, as mitigation, but in the groundwater, that's good to know, Jonathan, because that didn't strike me as apparent in your filing there. So, so you're saying that the groundwater is obviously where the wetlands are?
Yes, it is quite shallow, even just outside the wetland boundary. And I would note too that in terms of the stormwater report, I can't totally speak for everything the engineers did since I'm, not the one doing the HydroCAD calculations, but
Sure.
I will say that per standard 2, there is a significant decrease in peak rate of runoff. However,
Right.
I do not know if we actually analyzed the volume going down. We didn't do a full water budget study or anything like that. But I do anticipate, given the different sources of hydrology at the site and the fact that these slopes are going to remain, and the fact that we're infiltrating, I do think we'll be maintaining the hydrology in these areas.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Lenore, do you feel satisfied with that answering your first concern?
Yes, I'll do a little bit more thinking about it, but I'm glad that Beta has given some thought to it because it did concern me, especially when I read the stormwater report, which talked about, taking all of this overland flow,
Right.
and sending it down, outside of these areas. But assuming Jonathan's right that, the infiltration from the basin is sandy soils, I agree that, that's very, pervious and it's likely to go back into the groundwater table quite quickly, which will in turn help to support these wetland areas and whatever function they may provide as a vernal pool habitat.
Okay, good. With all that said, I will now poll the commissioners to see if they have any questions. Commissioner Livingstone?
No question.
You have no questions. Thank you. Mazzucchelli?
This is Andrew Mazzucchelli. I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gallagher?
Just one question, and also Commissioner Mazzucchelli, you are looking very sharp tonight.
Thank you.
Just for the sake of argument, to play out Lenore's question a bit more, say that this project went forward without the 2 catch basins and without the additional area for stormwater drainage. Without having necessarily analyzed that, do you know what the effect is?
Sure, the effect would, well, I guess the first effect in terms of, a sort of, in the regulatory sense is that this project would not meet the Massachusetts stormwater standards. We are subject to meeting the standards to the fullest extent for all new impervious area, since any new impervious area cannot take redevelopment credits. Portions of the project were replacing existing pavement that can be considered redevelopment. We only meet the standards to the maximum extent practicable. But with these new areas, we're required to meet them fully. And since we're in a critical area, we're actually required to treat, instead of a ½ inch of runoff, we're required to treat and infiltrate a full inch of runoff. So all of these factors in terms of regulation led us down the path of doing the stormwater design. But from a more practical in the field sense, what you would probably see without this is if you were to convert these roadway shoulders to, impervious pavement, and you had no treatment and really no thought put into it, you could increase the rate of runoff leaving the site, scour down these 30 to 35% slopes, and possibly cause sedimentation of these vernal pools. So I do think in addition to not meeting stormwater regulations, the project leaving out these stormwater features would negatively impact the resource areas, and that's why we do consider them our mitigation for this project, since the project is constructing pavement within the buffer zone.
Great, that's very helpful. Thank you for that answer.
No problem.
You good?
I'm good.
Thank you, Patrick. Since everybody seems to be satisfied, it is a public hearing, and therefore now would be the appropriate time to get public comment if there are any. So let me ask, does anybody from the public have a question on the Grove Street Shared Path Project, NOI? Okay, I'll ask us, I'm sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening. Can you
Sorry.
identify yourself with address, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Nick Schatz. I live at 1 Rosewood Lane,
Yes, Nick.
right on the east side of Grove Street. My only question, we have 5 or 6 adult pine trees right on the border of Grove Street there, and they provide quite a visual and noise barrier to Grove Street and all the recent industrial impacts of Grove Street. And I was just curious of the impacts that this project would have on those trees.
Jonathan, can you answer that?
Yes, so I'm looking at the plan here, and based on our call outs and some additional survey work we did, there will be, for that infiltration basin, which is in that area you're referring to, Nick, there'll be removal of 5 pine trees in the range of 14 to 16 inches diameter breast height. So I will say, you know, this area is outside the 100-foot buffer zone of the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction,
Right.
but I do know this is a town project, so the choice to do any sort of vegetative mitigation would be up to the town and the
Correct.
applicant.
Yes, and I want to echo that. Once you're outside the 100-foot area, it is no longer under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, and therefore, as Jonathan said, that becomes more of a town DPW issue. So the commission can't answer that question for you. Hopefully Jonathan did. I'm not sure you like that answer, but that's the law.
Right.
So the commission.
Kind of tough to get like a defined, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry,
that's
just
okay.
kind of tough to get a defined answer, just kind of like, you know, it's up to the town. So do you have any idea who I would talk to just to try to figure out an answer on that? I mean, those pine trees were planted, you know, 4 feet tall when I was born, and now they're probably 20, 25 feet tall. They just provide a really good, you know, noise and visual barrier against Grove Street. And, you know, I just want to make sure, you know, on my father's behalf, my father's a landowner, and I just want to make sure that that barrier is going to, you know, stay intact, whether it be moving those trees back. I'm not sure if they would survive. That's more of like an environmental question, I guess. But, you know, I just want to make sure that that would remain intact just to, you know, help my father out.
Well, you're in luck because we have somebody that can answer that for you. Would you please readdress?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Brooke Cotta, the Assistant Town Engineer. I can't make any promises, but we can look at the design and see what we can do as far as that goes. I can't make any promises.
Right. Is there anybody I can talk to get like, you know,
Well,
not
not
that
from
you-
not from the Conservation Commission. We can't, we're not going to take a jurisdiction on that since it's outside of our range of authority. Brian, you can,
I'll be happy to, I'm sure Brooke will go back and talk with the town engineer and/or the DPW director about the design and to mitigate if possible. And they'll talk with their, you know, beta engineers and come up with something if they can. I'll make sure that they do before the next meeting. That's all I can, you know, I'll make sure they talk about it. That's all I can do.
that's terrific, but
Yeah.
I want everybody to understand that will not affect our vote
Correct, yeah.
on the NOI.
Yeah.
So that, I have to be clear on that. Any other questions from the public? Now would be the time.
I have one. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Labate. I live at 4 Warwick Road, which runs right into that area there. And my question was about the phasing. You mentioned there are 2 phases to this project, and the project is primarily about improving Washington Street for motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists. And I'm wondering if you're at liberty to just broadly share what phase 2 involves, just because we have a lot of accidents at that intersection.
So I would say, you know, obviously this, as you said, this filing's for phase 1. You know, ask Brooke Cotta if she has any details that she'd be able to share about phase 2, or if things are still pretty far behind in design right now.
Brooke, would you care to comment?
Hi, Ricotta, Assistant Town Engineer. I think phase 2 will potentially include sidewalks, and roadways and the gist of that.
Yeah, and the chair will acknowledge, again, traffic patterns don't affect wetlands as long as they're not on them, so the commission will not take a side on that issue. It would be inappropriate for us to do so. Thank you, Brooke. I'm not sure that answers or gives any satisfaction, but that question is with the wrong commission. So.
Can you tell me which commission I should inquire of?
Brooke?
Hi, Ricotta. So we'll discuss it. I'll bring these comments back to the town engineer and Beta, and we'll kind of come up with a plan as the town and take these into consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the public that deal with the wetlands and/or this project as they approach within those buffers? Okay, there are none. So what I will do at this point is ask for a motion to close the public hearing for the NOI on the Grove Street shared path. Mr. Mazzucchelli.
Andrew Mazzucchelli, I vote to close the NOI on Grove Street path.
Thank you. Do I have a second to close the public hearing, please? Thank you from Commissioner Livingstone. Let's take a vote on closing the public hearing. Commissioner Gallagher, do you vote to close?
This is Pat Gallagher. I vote to close.
Thank you. Commissioner Livingstone, do you vote to close?
This is Commissioner Livingston, vote to close.
Thank you. Commissioner Mazzucchelli, do you vote to close?
Andrew Mazzucchelli, I vote to close.
Thank you. This is Commissioner and Chairman Batchelor. I also vote to close. We have quorum and 4-0 to close the public hearing. I will now ask for a motion to approve the NOI for Grove Street Share Path Phase 1.
Andrew Mazzucchelli, I vote to approve the NOI for Grove Street path phase 1.
Thank you. Commissioner Livingstone, do I have a second?
Livingston, a second.
Thank you. Let's take a vote on approval. Commissioner Gallagher, how do you vote?
Pat Gallagher, I vote to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Livingstone, how do you vote?
Mr. Livingston, vote to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Mazzucchelli.
Andrew Mazzucchelli, I vote to approve.
Thank you. This is Commissioner and Chair Batchelor. I also vote to approve. We have quorum. It's a 4-0 approval vote. The NOI for Grove Street Shared Path is approved. Thank you all. Mr. Mazzucchelli, Commissioner, would you get Vice Chair
Absolutely.
Milne back?
Have a good night, all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Good job.
Thank you.
Let the record show that Commissioner and Vice Chair Jeff Milne is rejoining the commission meeting. Welcome back. Thank you. We have a second public hearing, and that is for an NOI on 10 Populatic. 10 Populatic. Is the applicant or their representative with us, please?
Yes, Greg Drake from Outback Engineering, representing David Turek and Prima Plumpet, the owners of 10 Populatic.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, let's see what we have here. Can you just give us an overview of where this project is, please?
Yes, we originally came in here in November with the initial design. If you want, I can pull up the revised design. We've actually been revised twice through comments from Lenore, Beta, and Mass DEP. We made revisions to the drawing.
That would be helpful.
I can't seem to share it. Took the security away.
We have nothing yet.
No, it's the shared, something happened here.
He is co-host.
Well, perhaps you can talk us through it.
Okay, basically, with the original design was with gabions, and it was a hard stone and wire. So basically, through Mass DEP recommendations in Lenore, they wanted a soft solution. That's what we came up with. It now is the solution with core fiber rolls and core fiber mesh on the slope and plantings, all native plantings. We reduced the area that was going to be only to where the tree fell into the water. That's what started this whole thing, that the tree fell into the water, took a bunch of the slope away along the river. And so now that's the only area we're dealing with the bank stabilization. And the last revision we just sent to Lenore, I just saw her comments. Basically, we put a bunch more detail on the types of plants that are going to go in there, added more details, get some clarification on that the tree fell into the water. Mass DEP says that's a natural act. It should stay there, and we can do the tank stabilization without touching the tree, so it won't disturb anything more in the water or the wildlife habitat. And there are some other trees there, and we're going to have recommending an arborist come out and look at them to see if just pruning them would help them to reduce the going into this thing, or they would have to be cut down if they didn't want the trees to go in. So that's basically, quickly in a nutshell, what's going on.
Isn't there also an issue with the new fence being installed and raised to a certain level so that wildlife can access?
Yes, I just saw that. Lenore can comment on that. I just saw that, and that's no problem. We certainly can do that as part of the conditions of
Right.
approval.
Okay, that's a good point. I think it's also a good segue to ask Lenore White to comment. Lenore, would you please comment on this project?
Sure. I agree with Greg that this project has been through a couple of different iterations, most of them resulting in downsizing the scope of work. Originally, there were 2 areas along the bank that were slated to be embanked with these hard gabion structures. I know DEP had a number of comments which were very similar to my comments, asking the applicant to try to reduce the scope of work and actually trying to propose more of a soft solution out there. So that is exactly what happened. The applicant revised the plans and pulled back one of the areas that's not going to be touched at all. So I think we have maybe 50 or 60 linear, maybe not even that much, maybe 30 linear feet along the bank.
36.
That's going to be revetted, and I say that lightly. It's really going to be, backfilled with some fill, planted, stabilized with both herbaceous plants and shrubs, and I think it's a workable solution. It's a very bad situation out there. I've met the homeowners out there, and the yard is eroding. There's a great degree of force that comes down out of that Charles River and hits that bank right in their backyard. So this is a solution that may provide some relief. It may not be a permanent solution. It may be something that just gives them some temporary time to figure out what their overall long-term plan is. But I think it's a good plan, and I think the applicant has satisfied the request that we've asked them to provide all the information. I think I haven't seen any other comments from DEP, so I assume they too are satisfied with it. So I think we've got a good project here that should move forward.
Well, thank you, Lenore. Appreciate that. Let's ask the commissioners how they feel. Commissioner Livingstone, do you have any comment on this project?
I do not.
You do not. Okay. Commissioner Milne?
I have no questions at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Mazzucchelli?
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Gallagher?
I just had one question, and I feel as though I am normally 100% in agreement with Lenore, but just had one minor item that I wanted to ask about that was giving me some concern. On the recommendation to have the fence 6 inches more or less above the ground level, and I don't know if any young children currently live at the home, but as a parent of young kids, that would be very, very concerning to me, and the risk of, a young child maybe crawling under that fence, or even a pet, and getting lost, or unable to get to them. And so, you know, I think not from a wetlands or jurisdictional perspective, but that would be, from a safety perspective, a little bit concerning to me. And I think that, to me, overrides the wetlands-related concerns of wildlife being able to go back and forth. So I would maybe suggest if we could not impose that condition, subject to everyone else's thoughts, but everything else, you know, echoing Lenore, I think the applicant has been extremely forthcoming in working with and through everyone's comments, and so thank you for that.
Okay. Lenore, would you care to comment on that?
Sure, I understand, Pat. I understand completely. I had recommended that the bottom portion of the fence, which is to be a vinyl fence, be elevated 6 inches. So I don't think 6 inches is something that's going to interfere with a kid. I don't, you know, I can't imagine that, but
That's a small kid.
I think it's something that that's a good idea, because oftentimes you will have animals that want to travel up and down that bank. And if there's a fence there, it forces them to, you know, move sideways or back in the water again. You know, there may be some mink, or there may be some other animals that are using that bank. So I think it's worthy of having some kind of distance below it, but I wouldn't certainly object if the commission overrules it.
Well, maybe we can accommodate it by shortening the length down to perhaps 4 inches. Would that be appropriate?
Yeah, I think that's okay. I mean, 6 inches is probably a little better for some small mammals that might be using that bank, but, you know, I mean, I'd like to.
Speak.
I
Yeah, I think either one is okay. You know, the fence doesn't extend. The river continues both beyond and back of the yard and in front, you know. So there's plenty of room for wildlife there. But if they did have an opportunity to come up onto the bank where that fence is, they couldn't get there. They'd have to move along. So there's room for them to move if they need to.
Patrick.
Hopefully that's okay.
Patrick, how do you feel about 4 inches? That'd be a pretty skinny kid.
I guess maybe I'm overly concerned about this. It worries me. My parent panic scenario is that you have a really slippery kid who sneaks under, and all of a sudden there's a fence in between you and you can't get to them.
I understand.
And kids they could sneak through little areas. We find ours under the bed all the time. And I don't know how it gets there.
Let's accommodate it 4.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Let's ask their commissioners again. Are you comfortable with that?
Oh, yeah.
Livingston, yes. Milne?
I'm very comfortable.
Mazzucchelli?
Yes.
Are you feeling better, Patrick?
I'm feeling better. Thank you for humoring me.
You're very welcome. And this is Commissioner and Chairman Batchelor. I feel good with the 4-inch rule on the fence. It's a public hearing, and now would be appropriate, if there's any public that have questions on this project, it would be appropriate to ask them. Okay, let me ask that again. If there's any public out there, residents that would like to have a question on 10 Populatic, now would be the time. Okay, there is none. Therefore, I will take a motion to close the public hearing from Commissioner Livingstone.
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Milne, second.
I'll second it.
Let's take a vote to close the public hearing. Commissioner Mazzucchelli?
Andrew Mazzucchelli, I vote to close.
Thank you. Milne?
Jeff Milne, vote to close.
Thank you. Livingstone?
Vote to close.
Thank you. Gallagher?
Vote to close.
Thank you. And this is Commissioner and Chairman Batchelor. I vote to close. Let me know that the hearing, public hearing on 10 Populatic is now closed. Now let's move forward to a vote to approve with the following special conditions: 20, 21, 24, 27 through 30, 32, 34, 41, 44, plus Accommodate the potential need for planting care and/or replacement. The fence shall only be installed once stabilization to the satisfaction of the Conservation Commission is achieved, and that will be with a 4-inch lift from the bottom. The siltation boom shall remain in place until stabilization to the satisfaction of the Conservation Commission is achieved. All plantings shall be provided with sufficient irrigation until they are fully established, please. And there will be a yearly monitoring plan to assess the plantings and make recommendations for improvements if necessary and as necessary, plus review the site in growing season to assess stability of the bank and assess the revegetation. The monitoring program shall continue until the area is fully stabilized with vegetation, approximately 75% or more, or until the Conservation Commission issues a COC, better known as a Certificate of Compliance, and any changes to the site or recommendations for further action shall be presented to the Conservation Commission prior to implementation. So with that mouthful be said, I'll take a motion to approve as stated from Commissioner Livingstone.
So moved.
So moved. Do I have a second? Billy?
I'll second that.
Okay, I won't ask you to read it back to me.
Thank you.
Let's take a vote. Mazzucchelli, Vote
This
to
is Andrew
approve?
Mazzucchelli. I vote to approve
with the conditions, correct?
with said conditions. Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Gallagher?
Pat Gallagher, I vote to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Livingstone?
I vote to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Vilney?
I vote to approve.
This is Commissioner Chair Batchelor. I vote to approve. We have unanimous vote to approve the NOI for 10 Populatic with conditions as stated. Thank you, everyone. All
Very
right.
much.
Very good. Thank you. That concludes this evening's public hearings. However, we do have more general business to take care of, so we'll move right into that. And the first issue of business is a certificate of compliance for 16 Crystal Pond Lane. Who wants to, Lenore? Anybody?
I'll be happy to discuss it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I
We
think
got,
Brian's the best one for that one. Thank you.
thank you, Lenore.
Yeah.
Brian?
I don't think the applicant's with us here, but that's all right. There's, the property at 16 Crystal Pond Lane has had 3 DEP numbers over the last 25 years now. So we were trying to figure this out, actually. It took quite a while because we were going through all kinds of things. But the SE 159-732 was never closed out. We never came in for a certificate of compliance.
Okay.
So, but after that, there was another project in the same area, the same property. That one was closed out, and they just recently went to the registry of deeds with it, okay?
Gotcha.
So this is a number on their deed that'll stay there forever until they get a certificate of compliance. There's no other real reason to do it. The work was done 20 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever the case
It's
may be.
moved.
So that's the reason they have submitted at this time.
Gotcha. Okay. That says it all. A 20-year-old project that never had a COC issued, and therefore, we just got to take care of this and seal it up. So it would be the Chair's recommendation that we just go ahead and issue the Certificate of Compliance as requested. How do you feel about it, Jeff?
I agree.
You agree? Livingston, I'm sorry, Milne?
I agree.
Mazzucchelli?
I'm in agreement.
Yeah. Patrick Gallagher?
Works for me.
Yeah, this, this is unfortunate, and when these come to us every once in a while, we just go ahead. So, let's take a vote. I'll take a motion to approve the certificate of compliance for 16 Crystal Pond Lane, please.
So moved.
Second? Let's take a vote. Mazzucchelli?
Andrew Mazzucchelli. I vote to approve.
Thank you. Gallagher?
Pat Gallagher, I vote to approve.
Thank you. Livingstone?
Vote to approve.
Thank you. Milne?
I vote to approve.
Thank you, Batchelor. I vote to approve. The certificate of compliance for 16 Crystal Pond Lane is hereby approved unanimously by the Conservation Commission. Thank you. Okay. We have some minutes to approve. We have minutes from our January 20th, 2022 meeting. I have reviewed them, and they are spot on as far as I can see. So I will take a motion to approve the minutes from January 20, 2022 from Commissioner Livingstone.
So moved?
Milne, second?
I'll second it.
Let's take a vote to approve. Mazzucchelli.
Andrew Mazzucchelli, I vote to approve.
Thank you. Gallagher.
Pat Gallagher, vote to approve.
Thank you. Livingstone.
Vote to approve?
Thank you. Milne.
Yes, vote to approve.
This is Commissioner and Chairman Batchelor. I also vote to approve the minutes for January 20th, 2022, so approved by the commission and unanimous. Okay. We have some discussions. Administrative approvals. The first one is Hambone Farm Road. Brian, you going to talk to that?
Certainly, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, since we haven't had an agent, we've had these 3 administrative approvals that have been completed. One being at Hambone Farm Road is replacement of 2 decks on the back of the house. They want to make them a little bit larger, and there are photos that were in your packet, correct?
Yes.
They're a little bit close to but they're all put in with techno posts screwed into the ground. There will be no excavation. If there's they've already agreed if there's anything, any loose dirt, anything at all gets cleaned up, put off-site, so that it should not have any impact on wetlands at all, and therefore I gave it the administrative approval. Go ahead with the project.
This is a layup, in my opinion, so I'll take a motion to approve the administrative approval given for 3 Hambone Farm Road, please. Livingstone,
So moved? Yep.
you approve?
Yeah, approve, yep.
Milne?
Yes.
Mazzucchelli?
Andrew Mazzucchelli, I vote to approve.
Gallagher?
Vote to approve.
Batchelor, vote to approve. We approve that. Thank you. Good work. We have another one coming up right after that. Noanette Brook Lane?
Yes.
That's the trees, right?
Noanette was removal of, at first they wanted to remove a lot of trees in the back there. Actually, I think, Lenore, did you go out on the site, I believe, on that one?
I did.
Yes.
Yes,
and-
I did.
Yeah.
I did, and the woman was very nice, and she had a tree guy come out and look at some trees that were overhanging onto the yard. So initially, she didn't know what she really wanted to do, whether it was removing a lot of trees or just 1 or 2 or just doing some trimming. But it appears that she filed the application to just remove 1 tree. It's right at the edge of the wetland. The work can occur from the lawn area, which is quite a bit higher from where the tree is located down towards the wetland area. So I think it certainly can be done without any impact to the wetlands.
Okay. Is anybody having a problem with that approval? Livingstone?
Nope, I'm fine.
You approve?
Yep. I approve.
Milne?
I approve.
Mazzucchelli?
I approve.
Patrick?
I approve.
And Batchelor? I approve. That's approved. Thank you. And then the final one is 370 King?
Correct. This one's a little bit different. It's actually a commercial project. It's in the parking lot of a restaurant, which is going to be converted over to a new restaurant. The DPW is having them install a grease trap for the project. They designed the project out so all work will be done in the paved area of the parking lot. There's curbing around the outsides. There are no storm drains that will be impacted in the parking area. They'll be using erosion control around any dirt piles, which I went out there on site after they started digging recently, and they have done that. So there is no impact to the wetlands, which are about 75 feet away from the pile of dirt.
Okay.
This is the old spruce pond.
I'm sorry?
This is the old spruce pond.
Spruce pond, yes.
Approve?
I approve.
Mazzucchelli?
I approve.
Gallagher?
All good. I approve.
Batchelor approved, so done. This appears that we have gone through the agenda this evening for the Conservation Commission, Town of Franklin. Are there any other issues that anyone wishes to discuss? Brian?
Not at this time, but I would like to talk at a future meeting about the Delcart property, would you? About ongoing, treatment of water, things of that nature. Maybe 3 or 4 weeks from now or something, whatever it is at that point, because our contract has run out with for our existing contract. So for the next growing season, before that happens, I wanna talk to you about what you
Excellent.
want to go.
Sure.
And there may be some other issues like that I can put on the agenda, but that one is, that one's that's gonna come up quick, I think.
Okay.
All right, so, the other thing, of course, is we really would love to get some signatures on the notice, the orders of conditions that were approved tonight.
All right. Any commissioner want to bring any issues up? None?
None.
All right, that being said, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Undebatable.
Do I have a second? Well, let's vote. Mazzucchelli.
Vote to adjourn.
Gallagher.
Vote to adjourn.
Livingstone.
Vote to adjourn.
Milne.
Vote to adjourn.
Bachelor. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Lenore, thank you for your help.
Oh, certainly. Be safe, everyone, tomorrow. It's gonna be
Recording
nice.
stopped.
Thank you, you
Thank
too.
you.
Amen.
Thank you, Lenore.
Thanks.
Thank
Have a
you,
good night, everyone.
Good meeting.
Good night.
Well, Michael, see what you're in for? Perfect. Piece of cake, right?
Well, that's true.
Hardened vets here.
That's true. By the way, we didn't expect Grove Street would be done in one meeting, so we actually don't even have a form completed for that one, so. But you can get, we'll get you to sign it
Okay.
in the near future.
Give us a heads up and we can always come in and sign.